All right, folks, we are back, and I got a guy on today that should need no introduction. Good old Mike Robertson, who I consider a good friend of mine. Mike's a great dude all the way around, and we'll see see how fast he gets on today. At least some of you guys have told me that you're amused by the first couple minutes here of waiting for the person to get on. So me and Mike just corresponded. I gave him the heads up. You probably want to use a phone or an iPad, so we'll see how it goes. So, Mike, if you're watching, I'm ready when you are, homie. Got 5 on, 6 on. Here we go. We're rolling. Oh shit, Mike Robertson, I believe, just broke the record. Man, I hope Chris Merritt's watching this. My brother.
Got it.
What's up?
Let's go.
So I think you just broke the record, okay? Like, Chris Merritt had the record at about, 30, 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Man, you got in real quick. That was impressive. So,
let's go, man. I'm ready.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. So I got to tell you, though, before we get started, me and Kagan were walking the parking lot, and I was like, hey, I got to do a podcast. So when I do this, I'm going to need you to hang out. She goes, well, who you doing it with? I said, Mr. Mike. I said, you remember Mr. Mike? And she goes, the guy that we had dinner with? I said, yeah. And she said, he had the little boy, he had the little girl, and he had the pretty wife with the curly hair.
Oh.
So you have to share that with the wife.
You know? I will, man. I will. Yeah, it was awesome, man. I love hanging out with her, and we need to get together soon, man. That was fun.
We do. I got ideas. After you left, I told my wife that I got to be a little more intentional about connecting families of guys that I'm really close with and I appreciate. So.
No, yeah. I agree.
Good deal. Well, looks like we got quite a few people on. Usually I'm like at 0 when we get on. So we got some people here watching. That's a good thing. And most of these guys know how this goes. Me and you could talk for forever about a lot of things that I think would be beneficial to the people watching this. But because we've got guys who are kind of general contractors on their own, all the way up to guys that have pretty robust businesses, I've decided that I want to kind of keep this around certain types of advice.
Okay.
So the first question that I'm going to ask you is, what is common advice that is very common in the marketplace, but people really struggle to do it? And the examples that I've used are email marketing and then also data tracking. Everybody knows they should do those two things, yet they don't. Does anything like that come to mind for you in hindsight or in your current situation?
Yeah, I think one of the big things for me that I heard growing up, I think it was cliche and I didn't fully understand it at the time, but just the value of getting your reps in, right? And that's universal, right? Whether it's in the gym, getting your own lifts in, or whether it's coaching, like that was a big thing for me. I always think back and like I did everything in my career backwards, right? So like I was doing the T-Nation thing 3 years out of the gate, writing, consulting, doing all these things. And man, I knew some things, but it wasn't until like 2010. Is my sound all messed up, or do I sound
It's okay? Echoing a little bit. It's echoing, but I mean.
Do you want me to get headphones?
Go for it. Yeah, we got time. Go for it.
I'm not in no rush. Seconds. I'll grab my headphones.
I'm not in no rush. Go for it. Yeah. If anybody else is watching right now and you got any questions you want me to drip in for Mike, or you got any comments, do that thing, like type it in or whatever. Like I know there's a way to do that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of talk while Mike's there. Me and Mike got to hang out about a week or two ago. He was on his way down to Florida, and he stopped by here and stayed the night here. So me and my daughter got to go out to dinner with him and his family and share that. And, any of you guys that are watching, like, man, like bonding capital was created in a lot of ways. But breaking bread with people is a lifelong thing that really, really forges great relationships. So any of you guys that, have an opportunity to meet, hang out, I would encourage you to do that. So.
All right.
We're in the game now.
Better?
Yeah, better. Yeah, no echo. Yep.
Okay. So coming back to this idea of getting your reps in, right? Like I was somebody that again had success almost before it was warranted. And part of that was just my drive to give back, my drive to help other coaches. But I think we have to put an emphasis on getting your reps in, right? And it's something that people say, it sounds kind of cliche, but the more you do it and the longer you do it, like here I am 21 years in, and I realized, damn, man, I didn't know Jack even like 5 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Or stuff that I thought I knew, and I'm looking at it differently now. So you got to get your reps in. You got to put the time in. And I think part of the problem now is, Bill and I talk about this all the time, is people put such a high value on information, but they don't always put the same level of value on experience. Or they think information can trump experience. Like, oh, if I can quote this textbook, or, oh, so-and-so said this, like, that's great. But like Joe Ken and I, you know this, we used to talk about, like, don't tell me what Verkhoshansky said or Mel Siff said or Charlie Francis said. Tell me what you know.
Yeah, man.
Like that's what I want to hear. So I think that's one of the biggest things is, like, you got to get your own reps. You got to build your own experiences, because that's what makes you great. It's not just repeating what somebody else said.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And honestly, I think that's what worked with me early on was that I knew I needed reps. You know, I didn't go to college. I'm trying to learn and figure this stuff out as my own. And I think intuitively just realized, like, I've got to try to put this stuff into action to figure out, do I know what the heck I'm doing, or can I even create any, specific outcomes? And I think in today's world, what you said is even more important, because everybody now wants to be an instant celebrity or instant, I don't even guru. I don't know whatever word we use now, and it's pretty damn easy to do it. And, if somebody looks the part and they throw up a bunch of content and information, some people will start to believe them. But I'm not so sure that's a strategy that you could build a business on, at least long term. There's probably some outliers there, but I think that's a hard thing to build a business on.
Well, it's not sustainable, right? Like, you can only, like, recite and regurgitate other people's stuff for so long before people are like, hey, but you're just saying what this other dude's saying. And it's his actual content. So why am I coming to you? I'm going to go to this guy because it's his original content or his real thoughts. And sometimes it's not even about having, like, new stuff. It's having something that's more relatable or a better story. Like, a lot of the things that you and I probably talk about, man, like teaching a squat or teaching a deadlift or running a business, like, there's other people out there teaching it. But part of it is people gravitate to the way I explain things or the way you run your business, your lifestyle, your personal beliefs. So, like, that's what makes people unique. And I think that's what people crave. Like, that's a real word these days, is authenticity. Like, versus this manufactured social media image. Like, man, just be real, be authentic. That's what people want.
Yeah, and so many people don't really know how to do that. And I think when I was younger, I was trying to be like other people too, because I didn't know who I was or what I believed in. But again, by way of, like, getting in a bunch of reps, you start to figure that out. Like, I don't know if I would have the courage to say some of the things I've said about periodization over the past couple of years if it wasn't me, like, going, like, deep diving and then trying to take what I was learning and actually apply it in the private market to a group of high school kids that all had different coaches, all on different programs. And eventually you go, wait a minute, the literature doesn't really match up with my reality.
Right.
So I've got to start figuring out what I believe in based on these things. And without reps, man, you can't do that. You just can't.
You don't have a filter, right? Like, we talk about this all the time. Like, when you're young, and it's harder now, right? Like, dude, there's so much information out there. And if somebody looks good and they sound smart, like, if you don't have a filter, how do you know? Versus, like, you do this long enough and you can read an article or you can watch a video or you can listen to a podcast and real quick figure out what somebody's about and if they know what they're doing, right? Or if they're just talking about, oh, I read this, like, I can tell when somebody's just read something and not applied it.
Well, that's a good. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, but that's the value in the reps and the experience, right? Like, because you've tried it and you've had not just successes, but you've had failures. So you can say, hey, man, that sounds great in this textbook or in this research paper. But when I got a kid for 8 weeks and the rest of the year they're playing soccer year round, like, my reality is different, bro. So,
man. That filter, I think, helps you assess a lot of things too. So there's somebody here recently sent me an IG of a girl because we're looking for a female trainer. Somebody sent me in her IG, and attractive girl, really good shape, and she's doing a lot of, like, really complex exercises. So the person who sent it to me assumed, like, she's really in the know.
Right.
So I started watching for a while and like how she was sequencing things,
Yep.
what she was putting together. And I just realized also after doing a little recon on her page, like, do we have any common people that she follows that I follow, which we actually did, which I was surprised.
Yep.
But she's just taking their content and putting it on her IG. She doesn't really know what she's doing.
Yeah.
So even like outside of, deciding on what you believe in regarding strength and conditioning, the more you know about this stuff, the more you've solidified your own beliefs through reps, the better decisions you'll make on hiring trainers and being able to assess the competition.
Yep.
Yeah, because I didn't even think about that until it just popped in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the filter is key, man. And like, I think I got a good start with it because I did like the master's program deal just because I didn't know what I wanted to do at 22 and knew I definitely wasn't mature enough to be doing much of anything really.
Yep.
So that helped, but man, there's no way to trade information for experience. You got to get the reps in, man.
Yeah. So before we go into the next question, I just thought about something like, what do you think allowed you to be so successful so early on? Because like I remember like reading your stuff on T Nation, and like what do you think it was that allowed you to have the courage, one, to step into that without the reps, admittedly, right? Like
right.
What do you think allowed you to like say, you know what, I'm gonna step into this, I'm gonna make myself one of the predominant educators in this industry, and I'm gonna do the damn thing. Like what do you think that was?
Man, I've thought about this a lot, and quite honestly, the big thing for me has always been just a burning passion to help other people, right? Like that's the reason we all get into this field, right? Nobody gets into strength and conditioning or personal training thinking, man, I'm about to be like the next Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos, right? Like we're not pulling in that kind of cash.
Yeah.
But we love fitness. Most importantly, we love helping people. We love those wins and those successes. So for me, I think it was just an extension of that, right? Like at an early age, I realized, hey man, as awesome as it is to help these 15 or 20 people that I'm coaching right now, man, if I can get on a site like T Nation, how many people are looking at that every single day? And how many people can I positively impact, right? So that's always been my thing. It's like, and I almost think of it as iFast is my hub. It's my place to have like a deep impact. Right? Yep. Because you're working with people, you see them every day, you have these relationships that you can never generate online.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's like my core, but then RTS and all the things that I can do from there. Now this is my breadth, right?
Yeah.
This is how I can touch, people across the US, across the globe, and I can help educate other trainers, other coaches. Like I just knew early on that I was passionate about sharing what I thought. Yeah. And it wasn't always right. Like, let's be real, like, or your thoughts change or your approach evolves. And that's, I think, the sign of growth.
Yep.
But man, I was always so excited to help other people and to share my experiences. And back in the day, it was like, oh yeah, look at all these things that I think I know. And now it's from a more humble perspective of, hey man, I took a lot of L's along the way too.
How many things do you read from back then that you kind of cringe at? Like, oh,
all
man.
of them. All of them. I had a guy write me the other day.
Like I've heard you talk about.
The sixth article I ever wrote was Eric Cressy and I. We wrote that whole Neanderthal No More series.
Yep.
And it was a 5-part series. And this guy wrote me, this is probably from 2004. He's like, hey man, I would love it if you would like turn this into an ebook. This is like the best thing ever. And I'm like, bro, I wouldn't do anything from that or very little. So.
Oh, he emailed you recently?
Oh, no, he wrote me like 2 weeks ago, dude. Oh. He's like, this is like the greatest article ever. I love it. Will you put this into an ebook? And I'm like, no,
so good.
No, I will not. So yeah, all of it, right? Like your mindset, your philosophy, it all evolves, right?
Yeah, man. Well, you know what I took from what you said? There's that, Tony Robbins talks about like the 6 human needs: certainty, uncertainty, significance, growth, love, and contribution, right? So those are all the needs that we all have. Yep. And most people will try to access significance in, especially our world, by way of certainty. If I look this way, if I show these exercises, if I'm training pro athletes, people will actually believe I know what I'm doing and I will be significant. Mm-hmm. And people call that, Tony calls that the lower level needs, right? Because essentially that certainty and significance can create addictions and all types of other things. I could go down a rabbit hole there. But it sounds like to me that what you did it for was growth and contribution. It was
Mm-hmm.
your way to contribute, give back, and help others, right? And that also helps you grow and kind of get reps and drive these ideas and beliefs, even if you question them currently, deeper into your mind. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that's missing in our world now. People are all about significance via certainty. Now they'll
Yes.
say it's about service, but I call bullshit.
Right. Right. Well, and let's be real here. I think when you're young, there's always some element of that, right?
Yep.
It's how quickly do you evolve out of that? So I'll be honest, like writing for T Nation, I can, beat my chest and say, hey man, I'm like a published author on
Yes.
like the biggest platform at that time, right? So I can say that, when I started training like pros, it's like, hey, here's another like notch in the belt. Hey, I spoke for Perform Better. So I can say all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at a certain point, there's this disconnect of, okay, yes, I've achieved this level of significance, but is that really distinguishing me in any meaningful way? Other than the fact that maybe I make a little bit more money, or I'm speaking on this topic or at this summit. Like, does that make me a better coach? Because I was thinking about this, like, dude, you weren't doing those things,
Mm-mm.
but you were killing it, right?
Yeah.
Like you were killing it in a very meaningful
100%.
way. Like I think back to the success that you've had and the athletes that you coached, bro, your roster is elite.
Yeah, man.
But people didn't know about you early on.
Very
So
true.
like that's where you have to step back and basically untie or untether those two pieces and realize, hey man, I can be incredibly significant without the whole world knowing about it.
And that's a hard thing today, man.
It
like,
is
it's hard. It's like people almost, even in, like silly ways, like you almost don't want to go out to eat in a nice restaurant without capturing the fact you were at a nice restaurant.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
we're all so just engaged in this, like, no, I want you to know that I know things and that I'm good and that I got things. And we've just seen this big shift in people's psychology in that way. And I don't know how I feel about it. I'm trying to embrace it a little bit more, because I like the post I shared the other day is like, some of my goals are going to require me to do more of this. And it's kind of weird to me to get on here, but that's an insecurity or something in me to where I feel weird about saying, no, look, I've done some things. And it's something I got to keep getting better at and getting better at and getting better at.
Yep.
But there's a lot of guys out there that, they don't put themselves out there. And I think because they're concerned with being labeled the way we might label some other people.
Yeah.
Right. So I totally understand that. And as somebody who's trying to step into that more myself, I encourage other people to do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's something that I keep coming back to, and I don't know, man. I have a lot of random deep thoughts when I drive, right? I've had a lot of time to drive lately. Drove to Florida, drove back, just took the family to the outlet mall, drove back. And so like one of the things that I've thought a lot about lately, and I think this is a natural evolution as you get old or older, is this movement away from like significance in the sense of what we would say like is commercial success.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, I wrote for this website. I spoke at this seminar. I've got this many followers. You get away from these kind of superficial measures of significance, and you focus more on impact. Right? Like impact to me is way more valuable now. So like, hey man, I don't care if I have 50,000 IG followers. I want to massively impact the 20 or so thousand that I do have, right?
Yeah.
Or like, hey man, I spend a lot of time right now coaching little kids sports teams, like my son's baseball team, my daughter's soccer team. Man, I can tell you, Saturday afternoon, I've not been more excited in probably the last year than I was for Kendall's soccer game, because I've just got this fun group of girls. We're super raw. Like we're going to be like me. We're kind of gritty. We're not the prettiest soccer team, but man, we work hard, we grind. So like that's impact. Like that's impact, and yeah, it's 10, 9 and 10-year-old girls. But to me, like if I have a positive impact on them, that's going to reverberate for a long period of time. They're going to keep playing soccer, or they're going to love sports, or they're going to stay more active. Like that's more meaningful to me now than saying, oh, I wrote this article for this website and look how awesome I am.
Man, that statement right there shows growth.
Yeah. I think so.
That's a value-based perspective, because you truly value impact, right? Like that's really what you want. And as you get older and you do more of this, you realize that like there's just as much significance in the impact you're having on those young girls, possibly more, than somebody reading an article on T Nation or something else, man. And that's,
Yep.
we talk about that with our coaches. Like, you have it, like the ability to impact and change a kid's life every day
Yeah.
that you come in contact with. I mean, we've got kids as young as 7 years old in here, and I'm involved in my daughter's sports teams too. And that's the coolest thing, man, is like when these kids are pliable and moldable, you can get into their life and make a positive impact. Lord knows I wish I had more of that in my life. It probably would have, saved me from some headaches and trouble,
Yeah. So, and here's something that I come back to too, right? Like sports are something that molded both of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you were an athlete growing up. I'm an athlete, or I was an athlete growing up. We revolve around sports to some degree now, right? Like we have gyms where we train athletes. But I think being involved in some of that day-to-day stuff, man, like I think not only about the kids, but the time that we get with our own kids, right? And it's the practice, but then sometimes it's the drive to or the drive from. And it's those conversations you can have, right? Like, hey, there's so many lessons you can teach about life, right? And that's one of the most impactful things I think that one of my coaches said to me, like, I love basketball growing up. And I didn't love this particular coach, but something he said to me was so impactful at a young age. I still remember it. I was probably a sophomore in high school. And he said, you know what? Like, sports are such a great vehicle for teaching life's lessons.
Yeah, man.
And I was like, damn, that's real. And I still think about that today. Like, I'm about to record this podcast today about just all the lessons that you can teach, about working hard, having fun, getting your reps in. Mistakes are a vehicle, right? Like there's so many lessons you can learn and so many lessons I'm trying to teach these kids that I work with now. Like that's what's exciting. That's what's fun about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like I shared with you, me being home but at my business, almost this whole year with Kagan has been such a blessing, man. Like it's made it hard to get things done. But the fact I've created the freedom to do it. And we have those like life lesson conversations every single day. It's funny. Where it might, I thought it was right here on my desk, but I've got a piece of paper that must be in my notebook in there that I keep on my desk. And anytime like a life lesson pops up in my mind, I write it down.
Oh, that's smart.
And I did this for my daughter probably 7 or 8 years ago, where I would get on a video and I would share with her a life lesson and just talk to her about it and how I wish I knew it or how it impacted me. And then what I did is, because me and computers, I had to go make an appointment at the Apple store and went and got it put into iMovie and then put it on a drive and gave it to her for her birthday. And it's always been something special that she's enjoyed. So I'm kind of building that out for Kagan now. Now I got a lot of time to think about this. So Kagan's might be like multi-layered and multi-yeared. Right. But that's awesome either way, right? Like extracting the lessons we've learned through sports and entrepreneurship and passing it on to our kids, like that's an obligation. And there are a lot of people that don't do that because they're pursuing money, pursuing significance, and they forget like these people in front of you should be why you're doing it. At least that's my perspective.
For sure, man, for sure. And I think sometimes too, like, we wear a lot of different hats, right? Like coach, business owner, parent, significant other, whatever the case may be. But like when you start thinking about like coaching, educating, parenting, there's a lot of overlaps there, right?
Yes.
The life lessons, man, there's a lot of overlap. So when you can start to think more, we all learn this in training too, right? Like once you understand the principles, then it's all about application. Like how does this principle apply to this facet of my life?
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's switch gears here a little bit.
Let's do it.
Within the same context of advice, what is some uncommon advice that you would give somebody jumping into this world right now? Things that they need to hear, but it's pretty uncommon.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's uncommon, but I just don't hear people say it enough. And I think this. I think everybody that I know that's successful knows this to some degree, right? You got to find your own path. And it's got to be your journey, right? Like when you and I hang out, there's been times where I think, here's what I remember, right? Where was that Lucas Summit? Was it the one in Orlando where we hung out basically the whole time, I feel like?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where like I really learned your story, right?
Yeah.
Like where you were from, who you were. I was like, damn, man, like this dude is real. And then I thought, man, other than like basketball, hip hop, and maybe shoes, we have nothing in common, right? Like in our background, right? Like you come from the streets, man. I come from the country. Like I grew up like baling hay and shoveling horse shit, you know, like, so backgrounds, like, but here we are, right? And we're having this conversation and we're in a similar space now. But part of that is we've been real to who we are along the way, right? And I think there's always this element when you're coming on of, oh, this person's successful, I'm going to be like them. Or this person's successful, I'm going to be like them, right? So it takes a while, right? And it's not overnight, but you got to find your path. And you got to embrace your journey because it's not the same. Like I could look at myself every day, and I've had people say this, like, oh, well, you're not as successful as Eric Cressy. So,
right.
Like Eric took his own path, right? Like Eric opened his gym. Like they associate us because we came up at the same time, damn near the same background, right? Like he studied under the same people I did at school. We started writing for T Nation at the same time. We created products together. But, you know, we had these like overlaps, but I've always been on my path and Eric's always been on Eric's path. And so like I have no issue with where I'm at and the things that I've achieved in my life. And I think that's where you have to, again, be comfortable with who you are. You got to have your own value sets, and you got to embrace your journey because you're never going to have my path. People are never going to have your path or Eric's or Bill Hartman's or whoever you like to follow. You're not going to follow their path. So you have to, again, look at principles. What has allowed them to be successful? Look at other people that are achieving the things that you want and emulate certain things that they do, but never stray from who you are and the things that make you unique. And again, that comes back to authenticity, right? Like if I tried to be like you, like people would know, like that dude's like, you do a little bit of recon and people are like, this guy, I mean, he's not from the streets, right? He's not doing the things that Andy did. He grew up in the country, baling hay and doing all these things. Like it's not the same. So that's where, and part of that is a level of growth and just comfort in who you are, right? And everybody hits that at a different time. Like I don't feel like, and I don't know if I've shared this very often, but I don't know if I was really comfortable in who I was till like my mid 30s. Like it took a long time, right? Like I had a lot of issues, insecurities. And so it took me a while to be like, no, like my story is unique. Who I am, like the growth and the things that I've been through, that makes me who I am. And I embrace that. So now it's a lot easier for me to sit here and have this conversation with you versus I forget what book we were talking about, but like the masks, right? The mask that people wear, like the mask is off at this point. Like this is who I am. Hopefully you like it and you can learn something from me. And if not, that's cool because I'm going to be me and I know the significance and the value and the impact that I have on the people around me.
There's a lot of gold in that. And so I think what held me back early on was I was scared to be myself because everybody that I was meeting had master's degrees and they went to college and like, I had a kid at 16. There was no college. I sold drugs. I just couldn't relate to people. So that created this like deep insecurity in me. But then as I started like sharing little bits of that with people, people were like, what? And it was almost like they started leaning into me more. Because I was finally being me. And, I mean, you've told me, a whole bunch of other people have told me that my story is my strength. It's not a weakness.
Absolutely,
and for a long time, I thought it was a weakness of mine. And I know there's people out there that like when you first get in this industry, you're looking for role models to be like. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Joe DeFranco inspired me in a lot of ways, but I didn't want to be Joe. I wanted to run a gym and be able to be myself because what I picked up from Joe, and I always talk about this with, he was standing there on the bar with, the white shit looking all jacked. Now, man, early 2000, that was kind of rare because like the gym that I had my contract at, like we were still wearing khakis and polos. So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, like that's how I want to be. Right. I watched Joe for a long time. And again, like being on your own path, but following others to extract lessons is, I think, important. And Joe built the gym and then admittedly got burnt out from the whole process and shifted online. Right. So I don't know if I can attribute this directly to him, but it was certainly one of those pieces that I took in, right? I was like, wait a minute. I don't want to always have to do all the work in this building.
Yep.
And it's sure as hell that I'm not against doing the work, but like, I want to have freedom.
Yep.
I don't want to be burnt out by my business. I don't want it to be Andy's business because
Yeah.
he's tied, you know? So following your path, using others that you respect for clarification and guidance is important, but staying true to who you are and owning your story is so, so important. And God, I wish I had known that early on. I mean, I wish I had known it because I thought I had to be like people in our industry. And that was a big mistake of mine.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there's two things. Number one, it keeps coming back to this idea of being authentic, right? Like more so now than ever, because everybody can create this facade or this image with social media. And hey, man, I can go rent this plane and make it look like I'm on a private plane or a private yacht and I'm living this lifestyle when you're doing none of that, right?
Yep.
So when you're authentic and you're real, people know it and they can feel it. So there's that element. But something else you said, I think that's really important, and especially the younger you are, I think the more important this is really diving in and taking time and creating space to figure out what you value in life.
Yes.
Right? So like the reason you can do all these things and you can say, hey, I want freedom. I don't want this to just be Andy's business, because you have a set of values that supersede whatever systems and operations you have going on in your gym, right?
Absolutely.
You're like, hey, man, we can talk X's and O's, tactics, strategies, getting 20 people into your funnel or whatever, 50 hot leads this week, you know, like we can hear about all that. But like, what if you don't need 50 new leads? What if you need like five really good leads that you know are going to convert? And hey, man, like, I don't want to have 5 locations. I want to have one that's killing it. And I got a staff that I trust that's killing it. And I work a sensible schedule because I grinded 60 and 70 hours for a long time. And now I don't want to make those same mistakes. I want to make time for my significant other or my family, right? Like those are things they don't teach you that.
No,
they don't talk about that, but that's real. Like that. And that's evolving.
And so many people don't know their own values because of like not exploring them. It's easier to borrow somebody else's.
Right.
And pick them up, right? And it's like we do that when we're young, like through identity exploration, right? Like we borrow other people's values, bolt it on, becomes a little bit more of us. But as you get older, like if you don't shed some of those and create your own, you can stay lost. Because I'll tell you one that I had to shed that was deeply ingrained into me was like, I believed money over everything for a long time in my life, man.
Yep.
Even my whole like reason for getting into not sport performance, because when I originally got it was fitness. It was like, oh, bitch, I'm about to make millions. I'm gonna create franchise prototypes. I'm gonna sell them to all these gyms. Like that's what I'm gonna do.
Right.
Because it was just all about money to me. And when I started making good money and I realized I wasn't happy, I knew I was missing something else.
Yes.
And now, don't get me wrong, I value money. I don't have like a money issue, but I'm more clear on like how much money I actually need to be happy.
Right.
And me going and making $1 million tomorrow would not change anything in my life, right? I mean, change the numbers in my bank account. Right. But outside of that, it wouldn't alter the way I live or the way I move or the way I do a lot of things. So I think that's important, like understanding your values and being willing to reflect on like, maybe what values am I holding on to that I should shed? And some more context to that just came to mind. In talking with guys who have been in college environment or pro environment, and then they move into the private market, there's some friction and conflict with their values and beliefs regarding the training process that they might have to sort out, because those are very different environments if you're coming into the private market from the pro sector or the college sector for sure.
Yeah. Well, okay, so you hit on a great point there. I think, and this is hard when you're young, right? Because again, especially social media now, like there's always been a push to like make more money, right? And like you said, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. I'm a capitalist at heart, right? There's a reason I'm an entrepreneur and I do the things that I do. But like you said, there's also this realization of, hey man, I don't need all of the money either, right? Like there's a certain point where you're like, could I spend more? Yes. Could I upgrade my lifestyle? Yes. But are those things necessarily going to scale my happiness exponentially? And the answer is no.
Never.
So I think that's important. And as a young person, nobody told me that, right? Like I came up, and again, I think about this a lot. Like when you get older, you have these reflections and these thoughts, right? And we didn't have a lot growing up, like not to the point where I worried if we would have food, but like material stuff, right? Like we lived in a small house, right? Like we didn't have a lot of extra money. Like I didn't have nice clothes. So it's like when you come out, you want to flip that, right? Because there's that insecurity. You're like, oh, I need to make all the money so I can do all those things. But then you get those things and a lot of those insecurities are still there.
Still there.
So then it's like, like you said, it's like shedding some of that, right? Like, okay, I flipped it now, but it doesn't impact who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So what do I really need? And again, it comes back to that idea of what are your values? What is meaningful to you? How much do you really need to be happy? And those are big questions, right?
And for your business, like what do you want your business to provide for you? Like I think for a really long time, for years, man. I mean, for you go all the way back to Ryan Lee, it was 6-figure trainer, right? There was this like dollar amount that was supposed to be the epitome of success. Then it was the $1 million gym. That became the epitome of success. But you got all these people chasing these numbers without any consideration for like, what does it really do for you? Because like, how much money do you really need to be happy? Because if you could, let's say you're, and you can pay yourself $125, would that be a win? And you got freedom, right? A lot of people think they've got to make $1 million to pay themselves $125. No, you don't. You don't. You can set your business up, and I would even argue you can make less than that and pay yourself that much. Now, context comes, into play there. But if you don't know why you want to make money, what you want your business to do for you, you can get caught chasing these arbitrary numbers and metrics that are no indication of somebody's happiness or success. I don't give a shit how much money you make. That's not how I define your success, right? And then even as an entrepreneur, it's the money you put in your pocket, not the money you make. Yes. We both probably know guys that they have $1 million businesses, but man, they're highly leveraged. They don't have that much freedom, and they can't pay themselves as much as they probably could if they had a different model and approach. Right.
Yeah. And that's where it comes back to, like, what is your definition of success? Right? Just like we talked about your values, what's your definition of success? If you're going to run your own business, who cares what anybody else is doing, right? Like you said, we know people that have huge facilities, right? Like tons of coaches, and outwardly they look incredibly successful. I had somebody come into my gym one time, a guy that you and I both know, in fact, came in and was just like, this is it? And I didn't hear about this till after the fact. And I want to be like, yeah, motherfucker, this is it.
That's it.
And we do amazing work. Right. And I know what you're doing. So you can laugh and you can have a 4X bigger facility and fake be, whatever you think you are. But dude, look at these jerseys on this wall. Look at these people that have come back. We have people that have been here 12 years now since we opened. So like, that's real. And so like, but that's where if I wasn't comfortable with who I was or what we're doing here, it'd probably make me really upset and I'd lose sleep over it. But it's like, whatever, man. Like, I know what my value system is. I know what success is for me. So like, you can say or think whatever you want. I'm just going to do what's best for me. I'm going to stay in my lane. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, kind of like my story where like for years I went into a high school as a high school strength coach and ran a business out of a high school weight room because it was overhead free.
Yeah.
If I was not secure in who I was and what my game plan was, like where I was going, that could have been awful for me. I mean, I went from doing really well, exclusivity contracts and multiple gyms in our area to going into a high school.
Yeah.
And it felt like a step down, but it was very intentional. I started putting way more money in my pocket.
Yeah.
And ultimately that situation was why I was able to do this debt free and set it up the way that I want, so, but if I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I was about, I wasn't secure, man, that move there could have set me backwards as opposed to springing me forward.
Yep. So one of the definitions of a successful business is being profitable to the primary shareholders, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you look at, and we think when we hear words like that, we think like a big business like Chase, right? Or a bank or something, but look, we're the primary shareholders in our business, right? Are you creating a profit? Yes or no? Or are you paying 40 other people first, and then you take whatever's left over every month, right? Like, I don't know. Like, that's the way I think about it. So.
No, I do too. And that's, I don't think anybody tells you this, even when like, some guys in the tribe, I'm helping them put together their business plan to open their facility.
Yep.
And I was thinking like, there's nothing in the front of, because there's one book called Business Plan in a Day. It's what I recommend people buy and kind of use as a framework.
Yep.
But there's nothing in the beginning of the book that's like, hey, look, think very critically about how you set this business up.
Right.
Because it will change your life. It'll change
Yeah.
your routines. It'll change the way you do things. So you need to be critical on how you set this thing up.
Yep.
You know, so even in the literature that's out there about starting businesses, they don't talk about this stuff.
No.
You know, so if you just try to learn how to run a business on paper without personal development too, getting clear on what you stand for, eventually you're going to run into some problems.
Yep. Well, and there's like, this is where it comes back to like those X's and O's strategies and tactics. A system I know you and I both use is profit first.
Yep.
And that's where, like, for me, my goal in profit first, when you're looking at those numbers, hey man, I want to put as much in that profit account every month as I can. Right. So, hey man, yeah, there's the X's and O's of cutting costs, right? Or increasing your income. But like at the end of the day, all those things are moot. If you're not putting money in your pocket as a business owner, you are not winning, and it's not sustainable.
It's funny that you mentioned the Orlando deal, because now I remember, you know, they had the VIP thing, and
Yep.
I was sitting in the VIP room, and I remember it was Krebs. Krebs started and there was like 30 people in this room, okay?
Yep.
And they had all paid significant money to be in the room.
Yep.
And Krebs started asking guys, hey, how many of you guys are actually paying yourself? And there was a small amount of hands that went up. And was like, how many of you guys are paying yourself X amount of dollars? I don't remember what it was, but even less.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting here thinking, all these people spend all this money to come here, and none of them can pay themselves.
Right.
You know, it's a scary thing that some guy, they create that situation for themselves because they, you know, they're just leading with their passion.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Hey, can I take this on a tangent for a minute? Because this brings up a great point.
Hell yeah.
So I think I'm pretty willing to admit, like 2008, when we opened iFast, I wouldn't say it was insecurity, but a part of it was there was this like stigma. If you're a great trainer or you're a great coach, you own your own gym.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so now 13 years later, I think, well, what if that wasn't the path? Right. Would I be less of a trainer or a coach if I didn't own my own business? And here's where I'm going with this, right? They're different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of paths, right? So like, hey man, you could be a great coach. Like I know great coaches because of like my podcast and that sort of thing that aren't on social media. They don't own a business. They're just in the trenches doing great work and they're making good money and they don't even necessarily own their own gym.
Yeah.
So again, this comes back to owning your own path, right? Like if you're passionate about running a business and being a great coach, that's fine. Just understand that those are two separate entities.
Yeah, they are.
Right?
They are.
Like
yeah.
I got in because I love coaching people. And then about 6 months in, I realized, holy, like there's a whole other side of this, right? Yep. Like I got to learn a different set of skills. I got to learn marketing. I got to learn selling. I got to learn systems and ops. So unless you're prepared to learn all those things or bring somebody into your business that's going to do those things for you, just understand, hey man, you're about to divide your time to try and be successful in this world.
Yep. You don't have a 9 to 5, you got a 5 to 9. And you don't have one job, you got 5.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to figure all that out. And there's some people, you know, I believe if you're willing to like learn all these skill sets and do it, like anybody can run a business. But I do think there are guys running businesses who are probably better served working for teams.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
probably guys working for teams who feel limited and are better suited for entrepreneurship, you know?
Yep.
So, but if you don't know and you just do what you think is hot or what the move is right now, you can get 10, 15 years into a career and realize you might have taken the wrong path.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, man, let me tie this up with this last question. We can go on forever. I got time.
Sure.
But so, and this is a gigantic one, so we can go a bunch of different ways with it. But
okay.
What would be the best piece of overall advice you would have for somebody starting a sport performance business or considering starting one?
Okay. So, and this may be cliche, but I'm going to say the best thing you can do if you're going to open a business, right? You can focus on all the business stuff and still go out of business if you can't get results. Now, you could go either way with this, right?
Yeah,
You could be
right,
like the
right.
best business person that knows nothing about training and go out of business, and flip that. You could be the best training person that knows nothing about business and go out of business.
Business.
But I've always been a believer that if you are truly great at your craft, and keep in mind when I say that, I mean the X's and O's skills, but the interpersonal skills too, right?
Yep.
Because we're in a human relationships game. If you can be really great at this, it gives you time to build up the business acumen.
It does.
Right? And I know you and I have talked about this because we run in similar circles and we've done a lot of the same things, but like being a good coach allowed me to learn the marketing skills, the selling skills, the writing and communication skills that then allowed me to feed back into my business. But if I didn't have this ability to be a great coach, to get results, to forge strong relationships with people first, I never would have had that amount of time.
Yes. No, I totally agree. And I think that helped me a ton, focusing on like believing in myself that I could earn. But so I was kind of backwards, right? So I got into this industry, wanted to like run a business, make a lot of money. But then I realized, wait a minute, if I ever want to be respected or have a brand that's respected, I got to be a really good coach. Yep. And I recognized that early on and pushed deep into like learning about everything in sport.
Yeah.
Just complete nerd out level. Now, prior to that, I'd probably read 5 books in my whole life.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, I was this voracious reader. That came about through a dedication to learn how to be a coach. And then as I felt like I was pretty solid with that, it was like, okay, now I'm just going to do the same thing with business. I'm going to try to do the same thing with sales and marketing and, all of those things as well. But you're right. I think that foundational principle of like making sure I'm really good at the job, the tactical job was super important. And then that bled into me being able to learn all the other ancillary pieces.
Yep.
And I think at some point, if you're serious about running a gym, you do have to cross the line where like that energy that you put into being a great coach, you've got to put into being a great leader and business owner.
Yes.
And this is something that I didn't really want to do, to be honest. I just didn't. But I've really kind of embraced it over the past couple of years where it's like, no, man, I'm going to get great at this. And I'm specifically leading and guiding my team. Me not being the guy that has to hold the ball and do everything. And, I want to do as little as possible for this business. I want to guide my team. I want to be the visionary. I want to be the big picture thinking and then empower these guys to do the rest of the work and function as a real entrepreneur. But man, that is a gigantic skill set to build. It is. And I don't know if it's ever ending, right? Like you can always learn more about training. You can always learn more about being a better business person, or like even that word leadership, man, holy moly. Like that word does not encompass everything that goes into it. And I've realized like that's a lifelong thing for me, like trying to be the type of leader that can guide people, my family, my friends, my business, like to the outcomes that they want and stay true to who I am. And that's no easy task, man. It's hard.
It's not. And here's the best way to think about it, right? Because it's easy to hear this and people start thinking of all these skill sets they need to create, right? Okay, well, I got to be a great coach, but then I got to understand the business side. We'll think of all the verticals in there, right? Like marketing, selling, communication, ops. Oh, crap. Well, I got to be a great leader too. So now let's take this back to training, right? Because if you look at a young kid, I mean, they need it all, right? They're slow, they're overweight, poor conditioning, no mobility. Like you don't attack all those things at once, right? You pick the greatest limiting factor and you focus on that. And you make it not a limiting factor anymore, right? So you pick up this physical quality. Well, now this is where it needs to be. So now I need to maintain this and then bring this up. And then these, now I've got both these, maintain, go up. And that's how it works, right? And then eventually you're like, holy crap, like I'm a really good business owner, but I haven't read a training book in 5 years. I need to get back to that side of it, right? So I think that's how you attack it, and that's how you avoid the overwhelm is constantly, like, here's a theme for today, is like constantly reflecting on things, right? Where am I at? Where do I want to be? What are my limiting factors? How do I take that next step? Versus, holy crap, I suck at all of the things, so I'm just going to go play video games or watch Netflix all day,
Yeah, so that's a great point. And to kind of like dive into that from that training perspective, if you can zero in on the one thing that you think is holding you back and give that a lot of time, where I'm not saying you don't study these other things, but like you go in on that one thing.
Yep.
It's very much like driving a specific adaptation,
Absolutely.
like a block periodization type of model, right?
Yep.
So a question that I thought would be interesting to ask you is like, if there was one specific skill you think somebody should develop on the business side, right? What do you think that would be?
Oof. Okay, I'm going to kind of tie these together. I think the overarching skill is communication skills, right? And that's kind of wishy-washy because a lot of things could go in there, right? Like writing a really, it sounds simple, but like writing a really clear, concise email, being able to parlay what you're doing in the gym and helping people understand how this squat is going to help them shed body fat, build muscle, improve their vertical jump, right? So I think communication, and then if we can drill down even further as far as purely business goes, like communicating and being able to sell. Like exactly, you got to be able to sell, and there's a lot of layers to that too, right? Like valuing selling, being okay with selling, knowing your worth, being confident, communication skills. Like we could go on and on there, but like when you have insecurities, that makes it hard to sell.
Yes.
So understanding your weaknesses and your insecurities and how they might hamper you in the selling process, I think is really important. And like one of the things that we talk about here, because we're not cheap, right? Like you could go somewhere else and pay like, I don't know, probably $149 a month and get some form of athletic development training.
Yeah.
Or you can come to iFast and it's like $329.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's hard, right? So if we have coaches that aren't used to making a lot of money, right? Or $329 is a lot of money to them, right? Like they can't see that value. And I'm like, but wait, they're paying you. So you don't think you're worth that amount of per month? So like helping them understand that and helping them understand that it's not about what you think. It's about what this person thinks and what they value, right? And I can tell you $329 a month for my kid to stay healthy or be better at their sport or have more success or more confidence, however you want to parlay it. Absolutely.
All in. Yeah.
Right. So selling is the thing, right?
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what I was going to say was sales. And I didn't even think about how that ties into communication.
Yep.
And then some of the other things you said, like people, I talk to a lot of guys and I ask them what they charge. And it's always way lower than what I think they should charge.
Yep.
Especially if I know them and I know they're a good coach too. It's usually more like, what? Like, are you serious? That's all you're charging? And I think that does come down to a lack of confidence in themselves or the product. They believe because people pay for that service at this rate at these places that they somehow have to charge that. And they don't. You know, you can be the most, you can't be the most or the cheapest and the best at the same time. Right?
No, it doesn't work.
It just doesn't work, right? So we're high price in our market and we get it. And I have no problem asking for that money because to me, it's a deal. Like
absolutely.
I feel like I'm giving you a deal.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's when you sell from a position of desperation, I need this sale, or lack of certainty and clarity around the value you provide, you're disadvantaged. And I do think that is an area that strength coaches specifically struggle. Personal trainers, a little bit better, especially if they work in the gym environment. But a lot of strength coaches, man, holy shit, they got money issues and they really struggle with the sales process as a whole for one reason or another. Yeah,
it's something that you have to get over if you're going to be successful, right? Like you have to. And I think all of us, maybe not all of us, there's that rare breed who is like irrationally confident about who they are and the value, but those people generally don't struggle to make money.
That's right.
For whatever reason, like they're making money hand over fist. I wouldn't say they're the greatest coach. I would even say they're an above average coach, but they do more than okay financially because they don't care, right? Like they just think they know what they're worth. They're willing to ask for it and they get it. Versus how many good or great coaches do we know that are broke or their gym's closed or they're working like 16-hour days because they're not willing or able to ask and get what they're worth.
Yeah, man.
So I think that's something you gotta get over that, man. And I'd say you can be the greatest coach, man, but if you can't sell and communicate to people the value of what you do, and sometimes it's not you know this too. It's not just, hey, you lost 20 pounds or you added 5 inches to your vert, right? It's like the intangible. It's the features versus the benefits. It's how you feel, right? It's the
How you
confidence that you
carry
have.
yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like that stuff. And that's where understanding selling, understanding the human psyche, there's a lot to that and a lot of layers to selling that they're not going to teach you, or that you're not going to get until you dive into that subject and understand it a little bit better.
For sure. And I'll tell you one thing that's helped me a lot in that area, and I've told this before, I'm sure me and you have talked about it, but when I was at Madison Academy, we had a weight room and a locker room, and you had to walk through the locker room to go to the bathrooms, typical like high school setup.
Right.
Well, when I would meet with parents who were interested in training with me, the only place I had to sell was the locker room. Okay. So I would go get 2 chairs, put them out. I'd get a whiteboard, bring the whiteboard out, and I would sit them down in the middle of this locker room that often smelled like the football pads and jock straps
Oh, yeah.
that they were surrounded by.
Yep.
Oftentimes there was trash everywhere because back then that place, they just had a culture of not sweeping the sheds.
Right.
And I would sell with certainty that
Yep.
I'm going to make your kid the best athlete. And back then, I was charging very similar prices.
Yep.
I was getting people on ACH and EFT back then out of a high school weight room surrounded by jock straps. And people
Yep.
were paying it.
Yep.
And it had a lot to do, I believe, that the value that I believed I could provide came through in that presentation or in that sales session.
Yep.
You know, so now when I sit in this office, in this building, and you walk through and you see all the pictures on the walls and all those things, like, it's a lot easier for me to sell now, you know?
Yeah.
So like, don't be afraid to like suffer through some awkward sales, you know, meetings. Like, be confident, be certain. And the more of that you have inside you, the easier it's going to be to close deals.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like anything else, right? Like the first time you trained somebody, it wasn't an amazing training session.
Yep.
So don't put pressure on yourself to be perfect, right? Like part of it is, well, again, coming back to authenticity and knowing you and your story, but just being real to how you are. And there's certain principles that when it comes to selling are valuable. And then you apply that to who you are and your situation and your environment. And I think that's what sets you up for success, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, Mike, I think that's a good place to stop. I got rid of my watch earlier because it was vibrating, so I didn't even know what time it was. But, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It means a lot.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, let's catch up again soon, and let's make that happen.
All right, man. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Take care, man. See you.